Okay, once you've made a couple of poses on your model, the rig, or on the rig to be specific, or if you're working with other people you probably want handles, so probably on the handles which have constraints to the rig, but in my case I don't. But yes, here you can move around the timeline, you can use arrow keys to move to a specific frame, have information on your frame when the start and the end of the timeline is here. It's probably good practice to create everything on one timeline, or one action as it were, and then copy all your animations into other actions later on and separate them out, and that way you can selectively delete things and keep things and have a save file with everything stored on in case you need it for maximum file compression for when you import it into the engine. Anyway, that's what I think you should do, but I don't have a second opinion on this. A couple of things to note is copy and paste frames, buttons here. I have not had much success using these. I recommend storing any frames or positions you want to go back to in poses with Shift L in pose mode. That way you can get back to them anytime. When you copy and paste things, sometimes it's very difficult to select the right bones and copy the right bits of information. I is the keyframe hotkey. So, and Control L gets you to the pose menu. So when I press Control L, you notice this bar at the bottom changes and it gives me the name of the current pose I'm on. I can use the scroll wheel on the mouse to cycle through all my poses. And it's very quick and easy to change the pose selected that way. So if I go to the start pose, I'm on frame 1, so I just, with A to select everything, which is with the rig selected, so I'm selecting all the bones. I press I and keyframe rotation only because it's forward kinematics and I don't need the other data. I'm not going to be moving anything around in this, and that's good practice for games design because the movement is controlled by code. And I'll go forward a few frames with the arrow keys and Control L, change new pose, I, keyframe rotation, go forward, and you can create poses while you do this and just do it in any order that you like. I personally create all my poses first and do the animation very quickly this way. However, you may find that, well, I don't think that's the best practice, to be honest. You should probably make them as you go along and just do animation normally and just save it as you go along. And yeah, it automatically tweens that for you, so you can press play to play it back and make animations. And as I said, if you want to do more animations, just get the frame numbers and do it all on one frame. And if you only select certain bones and then press Control L to go into the pose menu, you'll only pose those bones, so you can mix and match all of your poses very easily and create animations with the data. Remember, you'll have to keyframe all of them. As soon as you change frame, any pose you've made that you haven't keyframed will be lost, so do watch out for that. I'm just doing this very roughly to demonstrate. I need to select the parent bone here to make the animation look right, because it's got a lot of the information is on the parent where most of the movement happens. But I'm not too bothered about this, it's just to demonstrate it and have more than one animation. So there, we've got a couple animations on that. And we can go over to the dope sheet, and just like we've got the options mode here for pose mode and edit mode and object mode, we have the dope sheet, the action editor, and some other things that I cannot really inform you on. I don't know anything about those. But the action editor is what I always use rather than the dope sheet. This isolates your actions separately. You get all the frames, not frames, sorry, bones here, and you can open these out and get the thing. Rotation here is in quaternion by default. You can change that in the options menu that you can show and hide with N. If you go to the top, you have the rotation, and you have the rotation mode in a drop down box, and just change that to whatever you want. I like to use XYZ Euler. You probably want to use Euler angles unless you understand quaternion rotation, and I certainly don't. Not very much anyway. Now here you have some important buttons. You have the current action you're on, and here you can select other actions. You have your pose library as a default action. I'd leave that alone if I was you. This button copies the action, which will just copy any information, and it will just increment the file number and the name. So now I've created a couple of animations, and different actions, not animations, sorry. And they've all got the same information on them. I can use the normal camera controls with middle mouse click to look at this, and you can select individual frames and edit it and drag them around with the grab hotkeys like G, and you've got shift duplicate, shift D as well. They all work, most of the normal controls work on frames, but you might get varied results. It's best to just animate straight up, I find, but I'm not a very good animator, don't take my word for it, learn more for yourselves. I've only learnt the very basics I need. Now, moving on, as I was explaining before, once you've got the separate actions, you should click this little F button, which will then give you a number telling you the number of users of this data. I don't know exactly what that means. It's something to do with how Blender works and having loads of nodes and connections between nodes. But basically, if you click that F, it will save and it will work when you export it. And you might, if you forget to click it, suddenly lose everything. So yeah. If I haven't mentioned it already, with an object selected, you can change its name here in this menu. I think I have mentioned that though, but remember to press enter after you've finished, otherwise it won't save. And yeah, you can just use B and box select and delete unwanted frames to isolate your animations. And once you've clicked F, you won't have to click it again, but do click it for all of your animations. And yeah, and I don't know about any other software, but if you export that as a Blender file or just an FBX, sorry, vice versa, just a Blender file or an FBX, Unity will be able to read it already, and you won't have to declare which animations start at what frames. And this is quite a time saver, but it isn't necessary, but it is quite useful. Again, I have had mixed results with this personally, using different versions of Blender and Unity, so I don't know how solid this is, and I can't give specific instructions, but you can definitely get this to work this way, and it's just a good way of separating animations, and it's good to understand for Blender. But you don't have to use it, and you can just make all your animations normally on one frame, in one scene animation, not on one frame, but just after each other, and declare the frames afterwards. It's entirely up to you and how you want to work.